2-1. That's the kind of scoreline that lives in the throat. Not a battering, not clean, not calm, not even especially convincing. But it counts, which in football and in everything else in this miserable simulation of a world is all that matters. Manchester United 2, Chelsea 1, and let me just say, this game was chaos. Wonderful, foolish. How is this real chaos? If you watch this with your shoes on, I envy your composure. This was the kind of match that makes you forget which leg your sock is on. It was also the kind of match that had more plot twists than a Netflix drama that's already been renewed for a second season before anyone watched the first. And the opening scene? Oh, it was a classic. 5 minutes in. Just 5. A whole lifetime of pre-match analysis, game plans, manager notes, and warm-ups flushed down the existential drain by a single wild lunge from Robert Sanchez. I don't know if he mistook Mbeumo for a haunted scarecrow or just forgot the basic rules of space and time, but whatever it was, the outcome was not subtle. A straight red card, earliest in Premier League history. And just like that, the match became a fever dream. Now, normally when a goalkeeper gets sent off in the opening 5 minutes, the match flatlines. Turns into a dull siege. Attack versus parked bus. But no, this one refused to become predictable. This game was an awkward, swinging chandelier that never quite crashed to the floor. And for a while, about, say, 38 minutes, it looked like Manchester United were going to light up Old Trafford with a full-on annihilation. Bruno Fernandes, because of course it was Bruno Fernandes, kicked off the scoring. Because why not mark your 200th Premier League appearance with your 100th goal? That's math. That's destiny. That's main character syndrome. The build-up? Some delightful chaos of its own. Mazraoui floated in a hopeful ball, Dorgu climbed like an enthusiastic lumberjack, and Fernandes, like he was responding to divine instruction, just ghosted into the perfect space. 1-0. Simple, sharp, arrogant. Then the strangest thing happened. Chelsea evaporated, not like water, like ambition. They pulled off Estevao, then Neto, then Palmer. One red card, and Maresca just surrendered the entire front line. It was like watching someone abandon their entire chessboard because they lost a knight. He brought on Tosin, a defender. Then Jorgensen, the substitute keeper. And by the time the third change was done, by minute 21, Chelsea were a tactical shrug. They gave the match to Manchester United on a doily. I don't want to say Maresca threw in the towel. I'm saying he soaked the towel in regret and fired it out of a cannon. United smelled blood. They didn't exactly feast, but they circled. Fernandes almost added another with a long-range shot that Jorgensen only just parried away. Mbeumo ran like he was possessed by the spirit of a track sprinter. And Casemiro, dear, chaotic Casemiro, decided to take his place in the match's strange theater of absurdity. When he headed in the second goal, it looked like the book was closing. Again, a mess of deflections and uncertain clearances. A header from Maguire. Yes, Maguire. Falling into Casemiro's path like a gift from a careless god. 2-0. You expected the rout. You expected the inevitable collapse. You forgot this was Manchester United. You forgot Casemiro is allergic to predictability. Because minutes later, as the half was crumbling into stoppage time, Casemiro, already booked, decided to wrap his arms around Santos like it was a wedding dance. No tactical reason, no dark arts, just a brain fart. A footballing tantrum performed by a man old enough to know better. Second yellow. Red card. 2-0 and now 10 men each. How does it feel when the balance of chaos tilts back toward equilibrium? Tense. Heavy. Everyone knows 2-0 is the most dangerous scoreline in football. Except it's not. 1 man up is the most dangerous scoreline in football. Because it invites passivity. And when that number comes back down to 10 versus 10, you realize you've been dancing with the lights on too early. Chelsea, now untethered by the weight of numerical inferiority, started to feel it. Possession tilted. Not threatening, not incisive, but still ominous. United, for all their posturing, were suddenly aware of the margin. One more mistake and the game flips. And the rain didn't help. Oh, the rain. That Old Trafford pitch was a sponge by the second half. Every slide looked like a man hydroplaning toward existential doubt. Every pass slowed like it was being filtered through a dream. And then, out of nowhere, like lightning finding its mark, Chelsea have the deficit. Trevoh Chalobah. If you saw it coming, you're either his mother or a time traveler. Chelsea played it smart, A short corner James, finally with a moment of space, sent in the kind of cross that haunts goalkeepers. Chalobah rose like a tower of inevitability and smashed the header past Bayindir. 2-1. 10 minutes to go. And suddenly, everything that had once felt certain started to stammer. Manchester United tightened up. Substitutions came like emergency sealant. Mainu, Yoro, Kunna. You could smell the anxiety. You could see the tension dripping off De Ligt's forehead. The players stopped looking for goals. They started looking for each other's eyes. The scoreboard didn't say 2-1. It said, try not to screw this up. Chelsea, despite the brave new energy, couldn't quite find the end product. Their substitutes didn't sting. They swarmed, but didn't sting. Santos had a golden moment in a late scramble, a chance to scuff it over the line to rescue a point from the depths, but his shot found a red wall. The ball pinged, bodies fell, and United survived. You could hear the relief when the final whistle blew, not a roar, a gasp, as if the crowd had collectively been holding its breath since minute 80. 2-1, 3 points, one match soaked in confusion, momentum shifts, and a generous ladle of idiocy. What does it feel like to watch a match fall into absurdity and drag itself out again? Like watching someone tumble down a hill and land on a throne. This wasn't a win polished by technique, it was sandpapered by circumstance. But wins don't need to be fair. They just need to be finished. And Manchester United, for all their flaws, their weirdness, their tragicomic decision-making, finished this one. And Chelsea? They'll look at this as a lesson in what not to do when life throws you a red card 5 minutes in. You don't unpick your whole team. You don't strip the attack bare and hope the midfield can crochet you a goal. You don't leave Garnacho untouched on the bench when your former stadium is practically inviting him to write the perfect narrative. Because if football loves anything, it's drama. But it hates hesitation. And that second half, it punished both. Now, let's talk about the people. The names, the ones who danced and the ones who disappeared. Bruno Fernandes might be a midfielder, but he's not playing like one. He's playing like someone trying to sneak into the Ballon d'Or ceremony through the service entrance. 100 goals and 200 appearances. It's not just a milestone, it's a threat. A love letter to chaos. He doesn't move like an artist, but he paints in panic. That goal? Arriving late, arriving right, stitching his foot into the story exactly when it mattered. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. But it was so him. And throughout the match, he was everywhere. Absolutely drunk on responsibility. He tracked, he barked, he picked fights with invisible referees. He threw passes like darts at a dartboard no one else could see. Sometimes the ideas were brilliant. Sometimes they were the kind of decisions that make you want to reboot him. But he was present. In a match where the weather was melting tactical plans into soup, Fernandes was the guy trying to pour meaning into it. If Manchester United had lost control, it wouldn't have been through lack of effort from him. And then there's Casemiro. Casemiro, the eternal menace disguised as a midfield elder statesman. His goal was timely, instinctual. He looked like he didn't want to celebrate it, as if even he knew that something stupid was coming later. And yes, it came. A second yellow card for what? A grip on the shoulder and a desperate tug. It wasn't violent, it wasn't even smart, it was just Casemiro. He has this weird compulsion to turn every good performance into a moral riddle. You can't even be mad. He's not trying to ruin it. He just is like this. But it mattered. His sending off reset the match like an unplugged video game console. Suddenly, all the risk was back, and Manchester United's spine had been removed. So what did they do? They leaned on De Ligt. And what a performance it was. You could almost see the Bavarian trauma bleeding out of him as he won duel after duel. One last-ditch block to deny João Pedro should be sold as an NFT. He didn't look fast. He never looks fast. But he positioned himself like a lighthouse in a storm. It was the most grown-up performance in a match full of toddlers with scissors. If United had anyone to thank besides Fernandes, it was this grumpy Dutch tower. Then there's Harry Maguire. Yes, that Harry Maguire. Still somehow both a punchline and a lifeline. His assist for Casemiro was one of those moments that remind you why he still plays. A calm, smart header across the box. Not flashy, not viral, just exactly what the moment needed. He played like a man trying to redeem several years of newspaper headlines in 90 minutes. And while he didn't dazzle, he also didn't unravel. For Harry Maguire, that's a roaring success. On the flanks, things were complicated. Let's start with Patrick Dorg. If football were judged only on how often a fullback gets into the final third and fails to deliver a decent cross, he'd be up for Player of the Season. He gets forward relentlessly, he makes the runs, he gets into space, and then it all goes grayscale. Cross after cross hitting the first man like it's a part of the ritual. It's infuriating because the ideas are right. The execution? Tragic. If he can fix his delivery, he becomes a weapon, but right now he's just a very fast sigh. Mazraoui, on the other hand, quietly had a solid day. No highlight reel moments, no panic, just steady service from the right. He was the adult in the wide areas, even got the pre-assist for the Fernandes goal. Played like a man who isn't trying to impress, but simply refuses to disappoint. You need those players, especially when the others are out here chasing ghosts. Now to the attackers, or should I say, the attackers who didn't attack. Amad Diallo. He tries. He tries. He gets into the right spots, but every final ball is a confession of doubt. There was one moment, Chesko ghosting into the box like a Christmas miracle, and Amad decides to run the ball into the abyss instead of lifting his head. It's becoming a pattern, a worrying one. You can feel the intelligence, you just can't see the decision-making. Sesko was better, much better. You can sense something brewing in him. The runs were clever. The hold-up play showed promise. His flick-on that led to the red card was underrated sorcery. He didn't score, and that's becoming a talking point. But you watch him, and you see a striker who's almost there. Just needs someone to stop crossing like they're allergic to air. Let him cook. That's what they say, right? Give him time. His ingredients are sound. And then there's Brian Bumo. This was one of those games where he buzzed. He was the fire starter for everything good in that first half. Got Sanch sent off, nearly scored himself. But as the match wore on, he faded. Not for lack of effort, but because Chelsea finally remembered how to defend his angles. Still, a dangerous presence. He runs like he knows something you don't, and he probably does. The substitutes were more pragmatic than poetic. Ugarte came on to stitch midfield wounds and did exactly that. Mainu brought calm. Kuna ran around like a man trying to convince the manager he knows where the kitchen is. And Yoro? Well, Yoro got dunked on by Chalobah for the goal. A cruel, cruel welcome to the match. You don't warm into the game when you're a centre-back. You are the game, and he misjudged his moment. Now let's flip it. Let's talk Chelsea. Trevoh Chalobah scored, and for that alone, he exits the match with a shred of dignity. He defended relatively well, made key blocks, and then added that goal to inject life into a corpse. He looked like the only person in a Chelsea shirt who wanted to win the match rather than simply finish it. Reece James offered more than usual. He kept appearing in wide spaces, floating in crosses with menace. But it all came a bit late. His assist was a thing of precision. But the rest, like a conductor without an orchestra. Nobody responded to his tempo. And then, Enzo Fernandez. A match of frustration and fury. You could see the wires crossing in his head. First half petulance, second half isolation. He tried to drag the midfield forward, but he had no partners. No rhythm. Just shouting into the void while Casemiro kicked him and the ball refused to bounce correctly. Caicedo wasn't great. Flat-footed, careless in tight areas. Got bossed by Fernandes, which shouldn't be happening if you're the supposed midfield enforcer. His best contribution was being forgotten by the camera for most of the game. And João Pedro, my sympathies. He tried. He did the lonely work, ran channels, absorbed hits, even linked play with some elegance. But it's hard to be a striker when your team is playing backwards out of fear. He played with a hunger, but he was chasing breadcrumbs. The rest of the Chelsea attack? Disassembled like IKEA furniture during a panic attack. Estevan was sacrificed early. So was Neto. Palmer apparently got injured, but whether he was pushed or jumped, the result was the same, a front line made of shadows. It left the team with George, Santos, and João Pedro, a mix of youth, chaos, and fatigue, trying to build something from scraps. And let's not forget Garnacho, left unused on the bench like a cursed object. Imagine sitting there, waiting to enter the cauldron of Old Trafford, your old home, your revenge arc written and ready. And your coach points to Tariq George instead. Garnacho probably considered changing allegiances mid-match. Chelsea had a grenade in their pocket, and they left the pin in. Maresca's subs will haunt him. He treated the red card like a funeral, not an inconvenience. Rather than adapt, he amputated. His coaching in this game was less about tactics and more about emotional damage control. He blinked, and once he blinked, United punched. This match wasn't a masterclass. It wasn't clean, but it was honest. It showed us that these two teams, for all their ambition and expensive talent, still operate on the edge of implosion. But United had just enough identity to carry them over the line. Chelsea, they had a plan, and then a panic, and then a prayer. And that was the difference. This has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.